right, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live, and we're going to bring our special guest on here in a second, but I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping first. Oh, nice. We've got some participants on the webinar. We've got some people watching live. So a couple of housekeeping things for MagicFlix generally. Once again, thanks everyone so much for coming. If you're here, please feel free to share the Facebook group. Feel free to share the event, share the webinar, anything that makes sense to you. Any and all things to get more people in here to get this wonderful information that we're about to receive from our special guest. And couple of updates here. I know a lot of you are on the MagicFlix mailing list, and if you're not, you can send me an email, or you can, if you want to get on the mailing list but not subscribe to the site, you can do that by clicking subscribe. It'll give you your email, and then you just don't pick a payment plan, whatever, and you'll get our emails. But we did and that gives you updates for all of this stuff. If you're watching inside the webinar, you can join the MagicFlix Community Center. That will help. And if you want to help us out, yeah, spread the word. Invite people to join the community center. All of our content creators are pretty active there. Like, subscribe, all that crap. Find us on Instagram and Twitter and all that nonsense. And yeah, one of my favorite additions. Just make sure you check out this week. We put up from Suit and Tie Magic. If you haven't seen this before, it's called the Tear Change. It's a beautiful color change which allows you to tear a card in half, and in the process of doing so, just at the last moment, both halves turn into the selection. So definitely check that out. That's from Suit and Tie Magic, who I think is watching here. So without further ado, I want to play a promo video for our special guest tonight, who is going to be walking us through all things cruise ship work. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen once again. Give me a sec here. Should have pulled this up before. There it is. Okay. Now sharing screen. Perfect.
Gravity is a Joke with comedy juggler Niels Duinker. Crowds from Europe to Asia, from Las Vegas to Dubai, have experienced the wonder and excitement of Niels Duinker live. The two biggest newspapers in his home country of the Netherlands called Niels hilarious and a juggling wonder. The Las Vegas Sun called his show impressive, and Nickelodeon simply called Niels the best. Three-time Variety Act of the Year, Niels Duinker is ready to bring you the same experience that has brought him to over 40 countries. Clubs, machetes, and even jokes are sent flying effortlessly in this fast and funny show full of variety. For comedy juggler Niels Duinker, gravity is a joke.
All right. So without further ado, let's welcome, with threes in the comments and applause in the comment thread down on the Facebook Live group, please welcome Niels Duinker.
Hey, Kent. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. How are you, man?
Really, really good. I'm right now in Ohio, getting ready for my show to open. And it's so I'm not on a cruise ship right now, but like all the cruise ships help me to prepare for this show that I'm going to do right here.
And so right now you're working at the Comedy Barn, is that right?
The Comedy Barn was the last 3 years, and right now I'm in Ohio. I'm at the Amish Country Theater. It's a 600-seat theater, and I'll be performing in their evening shows, and I'll be doing my own show here as well, which is a different version. It's kind of based on my cruise ship show, but it's a different, bigger version than my cruise ship show.
I see. All right, well, so many people are curious about this topic. This is something that seems like a bit of a holy grail, a bit of a white whale for a lot of magicians. I mean, myself, I dug into the idea of performing for cruise ships for a little while. The corporate gigs kind of overwhelmed the dream of doing that, but yeah, it seemed like I personally just had no idea where to start. And so you've wonderfully prepared this beautiful document for us, as you're going to go through just point by point And usually we have people ask questions at the very end, right? But this time, I think what I want to do, because we've got sort of a schedule that you're going to be going through, a list of point items. I think it'd be a good idea to just take them one at a time. And if I notice questions are popping up in the comment thread, then I'm going to go ahead and just
Sure.
shoot them in there while we go, because I want to make sure the information comes out in a way that people can digest. And just so everyone knows, this will be available on YouTube tomorrow on the YouTube channel, and also it'll stay up on this group for now, for a little while anyway. Okay, so take it away, Niels.
Yeah, perfect. So like it was fun. Like a couple weeks ago, we started talking about like a topic that I could provide value with, and it's like the cruise ships. I've done cruise ships for 7-8 years. I've been on 45 different cruise ships, about 7 different cruise lines, like all over the world. And yeah, it's such a broad spectrum. Like between getting booked, structuring the show, there's so much stuff that comes in play. So we started talking, and I was like, yeah, what do you think would be interesting? Because sometimes if you've done it so much, you forget what is interesting to people. So it was actually cool. You wrote the description for this lecture. And from that point, I just started to make a little preparation of for this lecture. So
yeah, it might have been kind to me to let you know what we were talking about before.
Well, it's actually real good, because I think this is the stuff that is going to be very valuable. You see, like building the show. That's a big portion. It's actually funny because I started thinking with building the show. Of course, the show needs to work on stage, but it's actually only a small portion of the entire cruise ship contract that you're on stage. Sometimes you're gone like for a week, 2 weeks, sometimes only a few days. And so you need to get the show on the airplane. That's a big aspect. You need to move it around throughout the ship. Sometimes your cabin is all the way down the aisle. The theater is all the way on the other side. So if your cruise ship show is not like packed well, it could be really like a pain to travel with it on the ship. It's all like thick carpets, and so that's all little things you need to think about. Like rehearsal time, you need to be able to set up the show in a short amount of time. So it's funny because some of your acts that they do very, very well on land, they may be impractical for the cruise ship. So it's kind of like a mix, how to build your show between what's a fit, what's actually practical, because sometimes you have very long travel days. Like it could be that you wake up like 3 in the morning. So you wake up 3 in the morning, you get a taxi to the airport, and then you have 2 or 3 different flights. Then you make it to the ship, and sometimes you make it to the ship, and then you read in the program that your show is that night. Sometimes you don't even get the letter right away because that's still like in the structure of the ship on its way to your cabin. But like you read the daily program just on the pier, and you find out like, crap, my show is that night. And then you still need to get settled into your cabin. You need to do a rehearsal. You need to and then do 2 shows. So it could be that day is going to be very, very long, from like 3 in the morning until you wake up till midnight.
I hadn't even thought of the concept of the fact that you need to be able to fit your show on a plane. Like that didn't even cross my mind. That makes perfect sense. But of course, right? And then getting it from one side of the ship to the other.
Yeah. So when you so it was real cool. Like you read a little wrote the description, and I read it's like building the show, and it's like it's actually building the show. First, it needs to be practical, because if it's not practical, you will never really last in the cruise line. It's going to be, every contract is going to be too much stress that at one point you just burn out too quickly, and you don't, because you still need to do a good amount. If you're a full-time cruise ship entertainer, per contract you make pretty good money, but then also I think like 3 contracts per month is pretty much the max, because if you fly to a gig, you're there like a week, then you fly back, then you're home a couple days, then you fly out again. So you can only do that 3 times a month, like realistically. Like on an average, if you do 3 a month, you're doing really, really good in the cruise ship market. So, but then also you have a little bit more expenses than working on land, because the airline sometimes they throw your suitcases around, and then you have like delicate magic props, or like if you don't pack it carefully, then your expenses can go up dramatically if you need to change stuff in your show all the time because it's just broken. So like, so it needs to be practical, otherwise you don't last. So And then first it needs to be practical, and then after that, of course, it also needs to play well onto the show. Because if it's so it's kind of funny because the cruise lines, they're very specific. They kind of know what they're looking for. They have on a certain amount of nights, they have a production show a couple times, and then one time maybe they have a comedy juggler, they have a magician, they have a singer, they have a violinist. And so it's kind of, if it's too out of the ordinary, so they have this stereotypical image what they want, like the juggler does this, does that. And if it's too weird, then the cruise director gets a little nervous, and then there's a bigger chance that they just write negatively, or like this, we don't know if it's a match for this cruise line. So it needs to be normal enough that they understand and it kind of fits into their stereotype, but it also needs to be unique enough that the agent can build a little bit of hype and just go, okay, you should get this guy over that guy because it's unique. So it's a real fine balance to and then also like between every cruise line it differs a little bit too. Like I got the fortune, I did like about 8 different cruise lines, and then you see the difference between all the cruise lines. So the main structure is the same, but then the clientele is different per cruise line. So Disney Cruise Line, it's families, it's kids, but then also if you think, okay, I kill it with library shows, and then there's difference too. Like it's family audience, but too like the people that can afford to cruise on Disney Cruise Line, they're like they're pretty well off. They earn a lot of money. So also like usually they're used to like more expensive brands, more expensive cars, maybe, like, so it's a specific niche of like of kids as well. And then you have Holland America line is different. It's a little older people. Then you have Royal Caribbean or bigger ships. So that's too. So you see certain entertainers, they do very, very well in certain cruise lines. For example, they do very well with Silver Seas, Azamara, like the smaller ships. And then other people do very well.
Let me hold you there. So you're saying that the different cruise lines have different audiences, right? Which seems perfectly reasonable. But what are the so let's go over them again. What are the specifics?
Yeah. So like so every cruise line, although the structure is kind of the same, usually they want a 45-minute show. So you do a 45-minute show in a theater. Per cruise line, like some ships are smaller, some ships are bigger. The bigger ships, usually they have bigger theaters, but then also they have sometimes smaller lounges in the bigger ships. So like, some cruise lines, they're more expensive, and some cruise lines is cheaper to go on a cruise vacation on that line. So if you go for the more expensive ships, they're smaller, it's a different type of people that books a vacation on those ships. So then your show needs to speak to those people. So if some performers, they do very, very well on Carnival Cruise Line and Royal Caribbean and Norwegian Cruise Line, and those are the bigger ships, and it's maybe more approachable. Like it's more like the people that we know that will book a vacation on those cruise lines. And then you have maybe the older, richer people that go to Azamara or Silver Seas or Regent Cruise Line. So some routines that would do very, very well, maybe in a theme park show. If you do a theme park or at a fair, you go, okay, that routine does very well at my fair show. It also will do very well at, for example, Carnival Cruise Line. But maybe you take that routine and you do it on board like a very luxury small cruise ship than the very rich people. So then it's more like, maybe do you think like, okay, this is my private show that I maybe do at Lions Clubs or something like that. Then it's more those kind of people that would cruise on those smaller ships with richer passengers.
So it sounds like if I can hold on just a sec. There we go. If I can interject here, it sounds like maybe there are so many different types of lines that rather than just going through them and saying, okay, with Norwegian, you do this, and with this specific Carnival cruise boat, you do this. It's more like, obviously the cheaper it is, the more sort of like families are going to go there, and a little more blue collar, a little more people that are like normal working class, but just want to get a vacation away with their family. Yeah. That's going to be more of a family show, maybe a little more commercial. And then when you when you're talking about something that's a little more expensive, a little pricier, we're talking about where you can balance a little more of your own art into it. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, you need to be able to speak to that clientele. So if you get real uncomfortable in like a private cocktail party with like very influential people, then you'll probably feel more uncomfortable on board that ship too.
Sure. Okay. So it's more just speak to the audience, and the audience is dictated by the size and price of the ship.
Yeah. So basically, what the cruise lines, because it's still a very prestigious gig. The cruise lines, they really can pick from really top-notch performers. So to get into the cruise market, you need to be very, very good.
Right.
Because you're competing with, like, I was on board the cruise with David Williamson, and so those caliber of performers, they are doing the cruise ships too. So it's not a market that you go, okay, I want to do it a little bit, I think it will be fun, I'm kind of good. You need to be like really, really good.
Yeah, who would want to compete with David Williamson? Jesus.
Yeah, he's a fantastic show, and he was one of the top. He was there all the time and he was so good that the cruise line just go, okay, let us know how much you want to work because we really want you. And he was on Disney Cruise Line, so so basically, like the agents, they have a pool of performers, and they just want to book you as much as possible. So you need to be so good that one time you go to, for example, Holland America Line, and for some ships, there's even now some of the newer ships, there's audiences like almost surrounded. So then your show needs to fit, like that you have people like almost behind you or the side, like for some magic tricks. You need to be so good with your craft that you recognize the situation. You go, okay, this is more like a circular stage. And the cruise director is not going to be happy if you say, like, okay, I only prepared my show for people to be in front of me, so I cannot work this stage. Then they will just write like, okay, this performer is not good enough for this ship. And the booker on the cruise lines, they don't really want to deal with. They just want to go, okay, this is a solid performer. It doesn't really matter if we send them to the smaller ship of the fleet or the bigger ship of the fleet or this ship where it's more surrounded. They just want to know that you can do a good job and entertain the people like on every ship of their fleet. So that also that requires like a lot of flexibility. So you need to be like really good. And so you have the challenge that you go, okay, crap, I need to be able to do 2 different 45-minute shows out of 2 suitcases that I can take on an airplane. And out of those 2 suitcases, you need to be able to do like 90 minutes of material, and also have clothing too. So if you go to some of the luxury cruise lines, you need to bring a suit, and those are a little bit more heavy to take a little bit more space in your luggage. So that all goes away from the room that you have for props.
Okay, so no packing your zigzag illusion.
Yeah, so it's actually funny because when I started the ships, it was like 2009, and I saw way more illusion shows on the ship than I saw when I did my last cruise ship, like maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. And then I started working the comedy barn all the time. And right now, of course, nobody's doing the ships because they're all on docked or still sailing out at sea without passengers. So, but yeah, I feel like more like a trend. So it's less of resident performers that are there for like a longer period with big stuff that the cruise line just flies in. It's now more like bring your stuff with you on the airplane, and we do shorter contracts.
All right, yeah, listen up, mentalists, right?
Yeah, that could be great. But then also, like usually most of the people speak English. But then you have also some cruise lines. One time they booked me on a ship. They said it's a crossing. It goes from Portugal to Brazil. So there was like a lot of Portuguese and Brazilian people. So it was only a few people spoke English. So sometimes you run into those situations too. So then if you're a mentalist, you need to talk a lot. Then you will be struggling more. But that was an occasion. And then the cruise line will give you a head up. They go like, okay, this is a unique situation. Can you still do it? And I say, yes, my juggling is visual. I can do it. So then I got that cruise. If I had said, no, I cannot do it because it's like really comedy based, then I would not have gotten that gig.
Great. Okay, so I want to take a moment here to bring into the world our chronicler, our media specialist, Will Bradshaw is here. Will, can you say hi?
Hello, can you guys hear me all right?
We can
Oh,
hear
look at that.
you. And if you're having trouble turning your video on, that's because I messed up when creating the webinar. We had to do a
No,
little.
it is not that whatsoever. I just happen to be at a location where I am not allowed to film inside of. So
Great.
I'm at a, yeah, I'm at a, magic place where I'm not allowed to do any of that stuff inside of. So,
I
but I am
love that.
here
That's
listening and chronicling, and all of this information, Niels, is fantastic. This is wonderful.
that is
Great,
so
thank you.
mysterious. So Will is going to be looking at the questions on the Facebook page. So it looks like we are rolling with questions now. But Will, while you pick out a couple of those for us in a minute, Niels, can I just ask you, how did you get started in juggling in general, and then how did you transition from whatever you were doing into cruise ships?
Okay, yeah. So I started juggling. I was like maybe 8 years old, 10 years old. My dad, every year there was like a street performing festival in Rotterdam where I grew up, and I saw the buskers, like they came for the last weekend of the summer to the town, and then there was like this big festival. So I was really intrigued by the jugglers that I saw there, and I was really intrigued with the concept that those guys just sort of came to their pitch with just a suitcase, opened a suitcase, and then just got a crowd and just entertained them. I thought it was so cool. And then when I was 12, I started juggling just as a hobby. I found a book in the library, and then I joined the kids circus, and then I started doing street shows myself, and then it just grew from there. So like small corporate events, and so by the time I joined my first cruise ship professionally, like I was 23 years old. I've been performing for like 10 years, just parties, small corporate events, theme parks, and yeah, so I graduated college. The week after that, I joined the ships, and that took me all over the world for like 8 years. And I really honed my theater show on the ships with the experience from the cruise, from the street performing, with the talking and the jokes and the interaction, and then all the juggling tricks that I've been practicing for so long really came together in the theater show that I did on the cruise ships. And then after 8 years on the ships, I got a little tired of like this hectic lifestyle, but like waking up early, flying, and then this opportunity opened up in Pigeon Forge to perform at the Comedy Barn Theater in Pigeon Forge, which is actually the senior cruise director of Carnival Cruise Line. He founded that theater like 25 years prior, and he knew of me, and we went to lunch a couple of times, and then he asked me to join the show. So I did, and then I did like 1,600 shows at the Comedy Barn in Pigeon Forge, and then that really helped me to hone my comedy skills and the juggling acts even more. And that then last year was the last season there, and now I'm here in Ohio, going from an act in a show in a tourist town to now doing my own show here in this tourist town in Ohio.
Wow. So forgive me, because I was looking at some of the questions here, and I may have missed it because it was kind of a split-second thing, but I do want to make an announcement for those who are in the webinar watching right now. It looks like you guys, I haven't done this way before, but it looks like I can allow you to talk. So if any of you have a question, you can either, those of you who are participating in the webinar itself, you can either, I don't know if you have a hand raise function or if you can just pop it into the Q&A feature that we have here. And it looks like we've got some major hitters here. We got Rob Ray, Daniel Chen, we got Misty Knight. Cool. So if you guys have any questions, you can either figure it out here and I'll see you, and you can maybe even ask it verbally, or you can pop over to the Facebook group. So the question that I had was your opportunity that you had to perform can you expand upon the first opportunity to perform on a cruise ship? Because obviously you were already prepared. You already had a show. Everything was good, right? And then you had an opportunity to perform and you were ready. And that kind of speaks to just being prepared for any opportunity that shows up, right?
Yeah, it took me, I was preparing. I really wanted to do the cruise ship. So it took me 5 years to get ready for the cruise ships. So it's actually funny. Like I saw the opportunities with juggling in Europe. So you had the variety scene where you work with a shorter act. And I liked like the prestige of those venues. was, but like I couldn't get a foot in the door in that market. And then the other thing that I really liked was the interactions with the comedy and the mic on the having a microphone and doing the longer shows. So then in 2004, I was invited to Las Vegas for a juggling convention that was aired on ESPN, and all the successful jugglers that I met in the United States, they were all working the cruise ships. And then I figured out what this cruise ship thing was. So basically it was this longer show in a nice venue with audience interaction. So it's like, okay, great. This really combines all the three things that I like about performing. So it's like, I really have to go after this cruise ship market. And then the other cool thing, timing wise, it lined up pretty well because all the ships were in the United States, the Caribbean, and Europe was just coming up with the cruise ship market. And because I went to Las Vegas in 2004 and I heard about the cruise ships, and then I saw that trend that it was about to start hitting hard in Europe with the cruise ship market, I already started preparing. And then I was based in the Netherlands. So you have the Baltic Sea, you have the Mediterranean Sea. The Netherlands was right in between the two, so it was very short flights. And then there was not that many visual acts that could do a show that was American enough for the cruise directors to understand what was going on, but still European enough to connect well with the European audiences. So
it's funny.
Yeah, I was like preparing for 5 years. So I went to a theme park in Japan where I did a 25-minute show without any talking. So that video actually helped me a lot getting into the cruise ship market, because the Americans head offices, they had no clue what's like, oh, they're so Europeans, they don't understand any English. And I was like, okay, that's a little overreacting, but like then they saw the video of me doing like a longer show that was still entertaining without any talking, and they go, okay, cool, we book him because then we know we're going to be safe. And then I was on the ship, and then I started doing the comedy, and that went over well. So I just started doing my thing, and the cruise directors liked it. And then I kept asking back, and then my agent managed to expand it to getting me booked on the other cruise lines as well.
Great. Okay, so you were prepared. That's good. But it took you 5 years to do so.
Yeah, and even like some stuff that the first couple cruises was not in my running order, was not in my show. It was good that I had this experience of working like in some discos, working in theme parks, working in that stuff, because first I started with doing a 25-minute spot on Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, just the last night of the cruise, and then I started going into the headliner spot where you need to do 45 minutes. So then suddenly I needed more time. So it was actually really good that I did the other contracts prior, that I could come out with 25 minutes very, very quickly. And then I saw the cruise market change even more. So they wanted a 45-minute show plus another 20-minute show. So then it meant more material, but it was good that I had done other contracts and still kept on some land work too, where I could develop other routines. And now, like right before I really stopped doing it full time, because I joined the show in Tennessee, they started requesting most lines 2 different 45-minute shows. And that's a lot of material. So you really have to be prepared, because that's too, if good chunks in those shows are not strong enough, then the passengers are not going to be happy. Or you go like, okay, I blow all my really, really good, strong material in the first show, and then you have nothing left for the second one. And that's maybe the show that they see last. And that's also what then they remember when they follow the comment cards online at the end, when they're back home.
Did you ever have to cut anything from a show that you really, really liked because it wasn't commercial enough?
I don't think so. I had to cut it. Not like when I was on the ship, but like maybe some routines that I developed that I knew they were good for maybe a variety show, or they were good for a street show, but then they were not a match for the cruise ship show. So I didn't have to cut it, because going in onto the ship, I already knew it wasn't going to be a match for that for the cruise ship show. So it never made it into the running order.
All right. Well, we're only 30 minutes. We're 30 minutes in here, and it's just from my first like 2 or 3 questions. So we're going to pass it off to our actual audience, because you guys are the ones that we're trying to discuss this with. And then we'll take a few questions, and then Niels, you can take it away, continuing down your bullet point.
Yeah. And also what's kind of cool too, we started talking about this topic, and then I was like, okay, let's do it. And also let's use this webinar as a test to see where the interest is for the people that are watching, and then I will just create like a little course that people can watch on MagicFlix in the paid section.
Yes, so that's a really cool thing. Is Niels is going to be taking this conversation and expanding it into a full course that you can go step by step through under the, behind the paywall on MagicFlix. So
yeah, because like it's such
free trial or whatever.
it's such a broad topic. Like I touched on like building the show, the travel aspect of it, that you can take it on an airplane and bring it onto the show and moving it around on the ship, then having it fit well onto the stage and connecting with the audiences, the different types of audiences across the different cruise lines. It's just so such a broad topic and maybe a little overwhelming. So so right now we're just like gathering information, see where the interest is, where's confusion for people that are watching, and then I will take all this information to go more in depth and go at a slower pace in the paid section later on.
Got it. All right. Well, we're going to bring Will over here, and he's going to give us a couple of questions from Facebook, and then we've got a few questions, it looks like, in the webinar chat. So go ahead, Will.
Yep, I've been gathering all the questions. So the first question is from Rupert K, and he asks, how do the booking people gauge your success on stage? Do they conduct a survey at the end? And what metrics do they use aside from attendance?
Rupert, that's a good question. Like what I heard, that they always go by the ratings. For some reason, everybody is like going nuts about ratings. I always try to do the best show that I possibly could do. Like so the cruise director is very, very important. So if he writes like the show bombed, it was not good, or it didn't connect with the crowd, then the booker in the head office will take his word for it, and it's going to be a big hit with your career with that cruise line. I had it one time with Norwegian Cruise Lines that the lighting technician was new to the job, and he couldn't program my lights, and then I was 24, 25, and then the cruise director thought like, okay, he's not like in his 40s like all the other cruise jugglers, so he's probably inexperienced because he's in his 20s, so it's probably his fault. So I got a negative report, and then it took my agent like 3 years before he could get me back with a cruise line. So so there's a digital survey that passengers get after they get home, and then they type out how they like the food, how they like the entertainment. So that's one, and the other is the report from the cruise director. And then I heard like the production manager in the theater writes some comments as well. So the head office reads those three, and if that's all good, then you get asked back.
Very good. Okay.
Fantastic. Next question I have here is from Eric Walton. Do you also offer juggling workshops on board? It's like
Eric,
an add-on.
Sometimes I do, and I think there's a trend that cruise lines want more entertainment for the same salary. So now they want 2 different 45-minute shows. Disney wanted workshops now too. Usually when I just started out in the ships, that was in 2008, 2009, they didn't really need it. It was more as a bonus that I brought it on. Like so when there was a crossing, so when the ship went from Europe back to the US and you had like 8 sea days, everybody at one point, the cruise director is going to run out of activities. Like you can only do so many bingos, and they're dying for activities. So then I helped them out by doing a juggling workshop. But like the last couple bookings that I got, it was more like almost like an expected thing. It's like same like in the circus, they say never help with one thing. Just volunteer one thing, because then it becomes part of your duty. And I feel like now the cruise lines, they're expected more and more. I hear from magicians that they're expected now to do the close-up show and like a workshop. So yes, I think now it's good to have that as part of your package to even get into that market. If you don't have 2 different 45s and you don't have a workshop, it's almost it's more difficult to get into the market.
Mm.
So a workshop makes it easier to sell yourself, because they're always looking for upsells on your price.
Well, yeah, and right now it's like some cruise lines, some magicians, they had good success with doing the extra close-up show, and they did it just to sell extra merchandise. But then then the other guy saw it, he did it too, and then a bunch of people did it, and now it's like, okay, we have a C day, then it becomes kind of like into their system. It became the new normal for them. It's like, okay, we expect you have you 2 different 45s, and we want to have a close-up show now too. Oh, you don't have the close-up show? Okay, well then we go with this guy that does have the close-up show.
Interesting. The market changing itself.
Yeah, it's more like a buyer's market now. I think too, like before was not as interesting for entertainers to go on the cruise ship, since there was a good amount of like well-paid corporate events, and there were other options. But now there's not that many options on land to do well-paid gigs consistently. So it's moving a little bit more to the cruise lines. It was moving, of course, now with this virus thing. It's a different scenario. But yeah, if it comes back to how it used to be, then it's more like a buyer's market, and they can expect more. So they can ask for more showtime, and then they will still find enough people that can meet their demands, although their demands are very high.
Got it. Okay, Will, any more?
Got it. Next one is from Katrina, and I apologize, Cronet. I'm very bad at this, but what she wants to know is, how do you think cruise ships will change now that we have COVID-19 and can't use volunteers in the same way? Also, now cruise ship stock went down and cruises aren't happening anymore. Do you think the market will eventually continue after this pandemic, or do you think COVID-19 kind of ended it for us?
I think it will come back, but maybe not to the same scale. It's going to be a while before it comes back to the biggest size that it was right before everything hit. That's what I think. And then also probably they're just going to add more restrictions on the show. So when I started, it was still pretty relaxed. With most cruise lines, I could go into the crew area and to the passenger area, and then they became more difficult with that one. And then they wanted more material, so I had to bring more show material. And then right at the end, then some cruise lines didn't want, for example, balloons. Like it got real difficult, like because one person had a latex allergy, and then so you couldn't use balloons for a while. Right. And then they become criticized for the environment and polluting everything. So then they said, well, you cannot use balloons, and you cannot use stuff that you have to throw out at the end of the show, because they had to look good for their shareholders and the world in that perspective. So I think with volunteers, it's going to be the next thing that they go like, okay, you cannot have volunteers, because some of the blogs that I read, like they want to do temperature checks and social distancing on the ship and all that kind of stuff. So then they go, okay, you cannot use volunteers, making it even more difficult for entertainers, because then I think they're just going to look for, are we still going to have enough people that can do 2 different 45-minute shows without bringing in a volunteer onto the stage and having the show fit into 2 suitcases, and being willing to do this big package for this fee that we're offering.
Right. Okay, so we have a question from the attendees. We're going to try this for the very first time on these programs. We are going to allow someone else who is not part of the plan to talk. And Daniel Chan, I see your question. I'm going to bring you in right now to talk, assuming you have a microphone. I'm going to click to allow, and if you don't talk for 5 or 6 seconds, I can just give the question myself. We'll see if it works out. All right, so Daniel Chan, this is a question from him. And you are muted right now. Maybe I can just unmute him myself. Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yep, and I actually can't, but that's okay. I will ask the question.
Yep.
But this comes from Daniel Chan, and the question is: have you seen any family acts on cruise lines, because he performs with his family?
Families acts in the sense of bring the entire family onto the ship?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, no, sorry, an act that is like a family act, like not an act for families, but a family, me and my daughter and my grandmother, and we're all juggling each other and whatever.
Yeah, I've not seen that. Even to the fact, I think that I saw more couples and duo acts and group acts prior, and then they figured out like, okay, this solo performer also can do the entire show, and we only have to buy one airplane ticket for that person, and we only have to give that person one cabin instead of like a group of 4. So some cruise lines still doing, and but I think it's less now than it used to be. And of course now with this virus and the way cruise lines come back, like the previous question too from Katrina, like all the stocks were down. And so what I think is that they're going to bring the cruise ships back in phases and see what's the demand, how many cruises can they sell, and then also for what prices, and then with maybe smaller capacity, so it's just less income that's coming into the ship. So I think they're going to be more conscious about spending too. So if you can bring more time, more entertainment, and your expenses are lower. So if you have fewer excess luggage, if you're one person and you can still bring all the value, I think you have an edge over a family act, for example, that is going to needs 2 cabins and 4 airplane tickets, is going to eat food for 4 people and all that stuff.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. So yes, Dan, I did try to unmute you, but I think you have to do it yourself. I couldn't do it myself.
So okay. Close. I know Dan and we spoke a couple times over Facebook, but I've never heard his voice.
Oh, that's a shame. Maybe we'll Dan, come up with another good question. We'll try to bring you back. All right. So it looks like the next thing on your agenda, we'll go away from the Facebook questions for a moment, but it looks like the next thing on your agenda was to talk about actually booking the gig. Is that right?
Let me see. Like, because I read the description of this webinar and I based like
that's where I'm looking
my list
here,
on that one. So I think one was I think the next one was satisfying the cruise crowd.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
So like satisfying cruise crowd, we'll touch a little bit based on that, like the difference between the cruise lines that throughout the year. So during the summer, traditionally, like you have more families and younger people, even on the cruise lines, like Holland America Line, that is more known for like older people that usually book their vacation on those ships. Yeah, so you have to satisfy those crowds, like depending what month in the year it is, and also what cruise line you're booked at. And then a very important thing, we talked a little bit based on that one too, about how to get asked back with so you want to satisfy the audience, but also very, very important, you want to satisfy the cruise director, because the cruise director is going to write the report that is very essential for you to get asked back or not. So if you really kill it with the audience, but then the cruise director doesn't like you, then it's still a slippery slope for you to get asked back or not. So yeah, you have the audience and you have the cruise director, and you need to satisfy them both.
Got it.
So that's one. Yeah, booking the gig.
Would you say that would just because it sounds like, would you say that if you satisfy the audience, what is the difference? What's the key difference? Unless I just totally spaced this, what's the key difference between satisfying the audience and satisfying the cruise director? Because if I'm the cruise director, I might not even like the show, but if the audience is rolling in the aisles and 5 stars all around, then I'm satisfied.
Most of the time, like there's maybe your show is so difficult to set up that it's gonna really put a strain on the team.
I see.
Or that you're gonna have like a lot of time that you need in to set up your show, and or maybe you have the bingo. Sometimes you have the bingo right before your show, so then they have the entire bingo set up. If you have your your invisible thread or like all kind of magic stuff that needs to be preset onto the stage, and that's why it's going to be more difficult for them to run the bingo. Right. The director maybe is not going to like you as much because bingo brings in money. Then he wants to do like a quick talk and then start your show. So if you can transition real quick and you're like very easy, your setup is very practical and you're easy to work with, then he's going to like you more. The same like if you have maybe you're just very difficult to work with, and you and him don't get along about some critical points, but you stress that information just for the fact that you know that you need to bring that across and you need to hold your ground with this kind of light, this kind of stuff backstage. But it's going to make the cruise director's life more difficult. He's not going to like you as much. And then it's going to be more difficult for him to structure all the other activities around it. So then he goes, okay, the audience really, really liked it, but it was not worth the hassle for the cruise line. And then you're still not going to get asked back. So that's, I think that's the main difference. And then sometimes, but that's like unprofessional and unlucky that maybe if it's a certain itinerary and the cruise director really gets along with another magician or another juggler that could fill that spot too. And then they request that act over you just because they get along on a personal base. Right. Yeah, then you're unlucky, but sometimes that happens too. So sometimes hear the sad stories that one act did well, but then it didn't represent it accurately in the report. They go back to the head office just because the cruise director wants to get his best friend back onto the ship so they can hang out in port together. But that's rare, but like that can make a difference too. That's for that reason that then the audience still likes you, but then that great feedback doesn't make it back to head office because the cruise director didn't write it down.
That's brutal. One more data point in the how you know column, or who you know rather, who you know.
Yeah, like it's and that's just bad luck. But sometimes it goes the other way around too. So that you go, okay, this cruise director really we have a good vibe and he knows the show and it's very easy for him, and then he requests you. So, but yeah, like that's why like on cruise ships it's a very small world, and like with entertainment you don't want to burn bridges unnecessarily, and especially in cruise ships you just want to be professional and nice to everybody.
All right. Well, before then, if the next topic is booking the gig, then before that, let's see if we have any other questions for you. I'm sure your next topic is the major question on everyone's mind, but go ahead, Will. Do you have any other questions from Facebook?
Yeah, I have quite a few here actually. Talking about booking things, what are some things that you recommend negotiating in your contract? I mean, Wi-Fi is pretty important to have on board and expensive. So can you work free Wi-Fi into your contract or other amenities into the contract? What is your experience with things like this?
I think right now, like as an entertainer, you have very little leeway to negotiate stuff. I think it's such a buyer's market, especially now, like when they start bringing back ships, there's not going to be the full fleet sailing right away. There's a lot of performers that are out of a job, and the cruise lines, they know that. So I think if you go, okay, I only want to do this gig if I get free Wi-Fi and I get this and I get that, then they go, okay, it's not worth the hassle. We only have a limited amount of spots to fill because we only have a certain amount of ships that we're bringing back right now. And we know that we have a big pool of performers that we used to work with, and they are all struggling because they didn't work for a while, and they're all dying to come back, and they can just pick whoever they want. So I think if you start demanding that kind of stuff, it's not going to happen. And they have also right now, like just the guest entertainer spot, these are the cabins that we have for it. These are the privileges that they get. And I think it's more and more rare getting special privileges that other performers don't get. So I think it's very minimal what you can negotiate right now.
It reminds me of, I'm sure many people have heard this story, but it's this idea that asking for really big stuff in your contract gives you some kind of credibility. Just because asking for it, I don't know, makes you seem like a star or something. But it's based on this old story where it's like this rock and roll band, they put in their contract that they'd have a bowl in their dressing room of only red M&Ms. And the whole thing is like, oh yeah, so you should make crazy demands. And it's like, well, the reason that they did that is because also in the same contract, they wanted a specific kind of like carabiner or rope or chain or some safety thing. And if they read about the whole bowl of red M&Ms and that was complete, then they know that they paid attention to everything else too. And so, what I'm hearing you say is that when it comes to cruise ship work, unless you're, Mick Jagger or whatever, and you can go ahead and demand these things because you're irreplaceable, you want to be as sort of easy to deal with as possible. Is that right?
Yes. And if you're like this special start, and they probably only bring you on as a special act on a charter cruise, and not like if you're like the regular bread and butter cruise ship entertainer, then yeah, you just want to fit in that system, and they have set it up like pretty well. So you get as a guest entertainer, usually you'll get like well, you always get your own cabin, but usually you'll get your own cabin with a window, and so like the structure is pretty good, and especially for on the cruise ship itself, you still get way better treatment than most people that work onto the ship. So yeah, you just want to don't make too many waves and just do a great job, and just basically what they want is like you show up for rehearsal on time, you make big waves during your show, you give a killer show, and after that you're pretty low key and you're easy to work with and pleasant, and you just make everybody's lives better.
Right. Big waves during the show, no waves off the show. I love it.
Correct.
Will, any more?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I can continue going on.
All right,
Next one is, yeah, here. Well, actually, I think this will lead right into the next question, which is from Bill Peterson. If you are good enough, how do you actually get booked? How do you get an agent to book you for a ship, or can you contact them directly and get the gigs?
Yeah, so I always went through an agent, and most people that I met on the cruise ships, they went through agents as well. I heard some stories, some people go directly, but like I think it's getting more and more rare. The security for the cruise line to have somebody through an agent is that agent has multiple, for example, multiple jugglers, multiple magicians in their database. So say they book this performer and the performer gets stuck somewhere because of like whatever riots nowadays or whatever, or like COVID and they cannot fly, whatever, then the agent has other people that they can maybe send out, or the agent is going to take over all the hassle of getting that performer there and help with that as well, instead of just one performer directly with the cruise line.
That's interesting.
Usually I would say like pretty much everybody I got. So like the more surefire way that I always recommend is go through an agent. And so there's a couple big players in the market. I know that I know that you mentioned there on the call as well, like Kakao and Misty Knight, they work together with a very prominent, good, top quality agents here in the US. So for magicians, I know that a couple really good magicians now represented by them. So if you're a magician and you're in the US, then might be worth your while to start talking with them and see if they want to represent you.
Yep.
Now that's that's interesting. We've got somebody who is attending the webinar right now, who books,
is an agent.
Yeah, who is an agent who books cruise ship work. So Will has just posted in the comments, but that's in the comment section on the thread on Facebook
page.
Right down here. Yep. And if you want to learn more about this, you can contact Misty Knight. She is.
And it's funny, like everybody always goes and asks like, oh, Missy, she says something like I cannot read it, but like maybe we can read.
She says thanks, Niels. I'm looking forward to. I'm also looking for European and Asian acts as well.
Okay, great.
So just out of go ahead, Neil.
It's so funny, like everybody always asks like, how do I get booked onto the ship? But like that's an important question, but like the question why it worked so well for me was that for 5 years I asked myself the question, how can I create a package that I'm so good that I will do well on the ships? Because there's so many people that want to get onto the ships, and then also like between the travel schedule and the diversity of the passengers and what they need, and then the big ships, the small ships. So they really need really good entertainers, like solid people. Also, like it could happen that you're stuck in an airport for like a day, and then you're stuck in a hotel for a couple days because the cruise ship couldn't dock at the city where you're supposed to join the ship, and they had to go to the next one. So then you have to wait in an airport in a country that's not your own to get a new flight to go to the next port. So besides just being a really solid performer, you also need to keep your head calm and stay cool and be able to deal with that kind of stuff too. So yes, I was like really always asking myself like, how can I be the package that is so solid that I will do well on the ships? And when you are so solid and you're such a good performer, eventually when you submit your stuff to the cruise agents, they will shine. They will see in your promo. Those people, they're professional entertainment bookers, so they are way more experienced with booking entertainment than maybe the lady that works as a receptionist at a corporation that's going to book the annual corporate event. Like those agents and the cruise lines, they have seen promotional videos of 100+ jugglers, of like a couple hundred magicians. They know the effects too. They can see like just by some jokes, maybe he's like, okay, I'm going to cut this joke into my promo material because it's going to get a big laugh. But they see, okay, this is this kind of maybe audience interaction that is kind of like makes everybody uncomfortable. It's kind of shady, but that's why everybody's laughing. They see the structures between like a solid performer and people that are just putting little hacks and little tricks into their promotional materials that maybe you can get away with corporate events and people that don't book entertainment that often. But these guys, they do know. They know if you're a solid performer or not. So yeah, basically like the big question to get us onto the ships and be successful with the ships, how can I be so solid and so experienced that I can deal well with like the cruise got extended by a day and we need another performer because this person got sick, and you need to come up with another 25 minutes like on the fly. And you need to be able to do that, because if you can't, then the cruise directors go like, okay, it was good, but like he couldn't meet those demands that we need, and then there's another person probably that can do it, and then you're out.
That's really interesting. I had never I'd never thought of it in those terms before. So when, just to go back to the agents thing, I can imagine, I used to have this in my head somewhere. I don't know if this was a fully formed opinion, but somewhere in my head I was like, well, why wouldn't they just book me directly? Because the agent is obviously going to charge them more on top of my fee. And so I thought of the agent sort of as like a weird like middleman, but actually the way you just mentioned it, the agent serves a very clear purpose as like a security blanket, a security, an insurance to.
And also like that money goes out of your fee. It doesn't get added on top of your fee. Like it's
Sure. Yeah.
So if they would book you directly, and basically they also have budgets. They go like, okay, this kind of act, we have a budget of, for example, $2,500 a week for that one. And this is a really solid performer and he's more on the high end. Maybe it's $3,000 for a week. They know what they're willing to pay for certain acts as well.
Right.
So, and then it's like, if you do it directly at the acts that managed to, because maybe they had old school, connections from years ago, and then it's kind of grandfathered in that they're booked directly. They know those fees too. So then if they get booked directly or they get booked through an agent, for the cruise line it's the same money.
Right. Will, any other questions from Facebook?
Yeah, absolutely. There is one from Henry Carlisle, which is, do theaters have audio visual screens available? Or audio video screens generally available for acts?
Yes.
To use.
Yes, and then also like the newer ships, they have so basically if it's an older ship, then the video projector could be older. But like also the very old ships that didn't have really good video projection capacities, they got upgraded like in dry dock. And for example, Oceania cruises was very, very old and was very, very crappy. So you had to come with like an RCA cable, but then they went to dry dock like 2 years ago, and now they have like LED walls and like HDMI and like top of the line. But like if you use that kind of stuff, you need to make sure that your setup is so solid and so works so smoothly that you can go into a tech rehearsal and explain, still make it work. Like your 45-minute show, you go into the theater and they expect within an hour, hour and a half that you are able to set up your entire show, which means you're gonna inform the stage crew about any cues, any props they need to bring on, take off the stage and all that kind of stuff. The lights technician needs to be able to program all the lights. You need to give the instructions for the cruise director how to announce you. The sound technician needs to know all the cues. So basically from walking into the theater to 75 minutes later, you need to be able to set up your entire 45-minute show and be comfortable after the 75 minutes, roughly. Sometimes you're unlucky and you get less time. Sometimes you're lucky and you get more time. Sometimes you're like on the same ship multiple times. So you set all the base structure for your entire show the first time, and then the next time the light and sound tech have a little bit more time to make the lights more pretty. Well, like basically like in that short amount of time, you need to be able to set up everything.
All right. So the question that I have, which I think is probably on more than just my mind, is what do you as an effective way to find an agent that's willing to book you for or that's willing to discuss cruise lines with you? It sounds like when you were talking about cruise ships, a cruise ship, you know, the cruise directors or the people who, well, actually, that's a good question. Who is actually making that decision? Because I know that the cruise director is dealing with you, and they have sort of maybe a veto power, as you were describing earlier. But who is actually making that decision? Do they just trust the agent, and the agent sends you through because the agent has decided that you're good enough? Or is it somebody that's on the ship, or who is actually doing that? And second part of that question, what kind of materials can you expect to have to send them to?
Okay.
It sounds like,
yes.
You know, you were talking about a sort of corporate cut reel where it's like, you know, me holding the sponge balls and saying, the clean hand. Oh, that was the clean hand. Ah, ha, ha, ha. But they've all heard that joke before, and so they know I'm kind of a hack. But what would I have to send them in order to be booked?
Right now, like it's you need to have like a really good short YouTube video that in maybe 1 or 2 minutes gives you the highlight of the show, so they get a feel for your show. What I also did, like I have my entire show available, so it's like, okay, most likely you don't have the time to watch a 45-minute show in full, but like here's my short act, or here's my short trailer, like kind of like the video that we started this webinar with. Yeah. And then I said, okay, also here I have available through this link 45 or 1 hour version of my show. So basically then by the short clips they can decide like, okay, do we like it? Do we think it's a mess? And then they can click on the full video. If you actually have enough meat, then you cannot really chop it up and make everything look good. And in that long video they can see if your jokes are actually, if your scripts are solid, and if you're a solid performer.
Yeah, I got to sorry to interrupt, but I got to think just the fact that you're sending them the full video means that you have the confidence to send it to them. That means something on the other end. Yeah, and sometimes like it's also, if your reputation is real solid, it's like maybe they saw you at the showcase, because that's what they do sometimes too. Then they saw it like one-on-one, they saw you perform live at a showcase, and then if they like it, they also know that you have the power and the stuff to actually, the good stuff to bring, and maybe your reputation, like if you just did a theater tour and it was very successful, and they know like, okay, he did these kind of performing arts centers, or he just did this run in this casino and it was a great show and everybody loved it and it was a reputable casino, then they also know that you're solid enough. But yeah, most likely, like usually, just like a very good short video. And then also, it was funny too, because sometimes the bookers, they change in the head office. So even if it's that you work maybe 5 years for one cruise line all the time, then the booker changed, and then the new booker doesn't know that you worked for that same cruise line. So then they know, okay, he is represented by, for example, Blackburn International. That's my agent in the UK. He has a great reputation in the industry. So if Blackburn is not going to risk his reputation by recommending acts that are not gonna do well, so then if the cruise line get pitched an act through Jonathan Blackburn, it already means something. It's like, okay, here you have the 1 minute video, and then they go, okay, we like this style of it, and then Jonathan says it's a good act, then maybe they don't even bother just keep going through the 45-minute show, because they already trust the reputation of the agent. So that's why it's very important to have good, solid agents as well, just that is in the business and represents like really good acts, because then they can pull their weight and bring you in. Got it. Will, anything more from Facebook before we're going to probably take a few more questions here, then let you finish up with your bullet points, although I think we probably covered a lot of what you were planning on talking about already. And
Yeah, I think we got everything from the list. So we can take a couple more questions, and I have nowhere to go, so we can just go as long as Zoom allows it.
Okay, well, Zoom will allow us to go, I think, 24 hours a day, 7 days.
I tried to give you an out in case you were bored, or like if you had to go somewhere. So.
Yeah, at some point we'll have to hit the restroom or whatever. But
okay,
So hit some more from Facebook, and then we'll call this part 1.
Cool. So Chuck Barrett wants to know just what the median pay of cruise ship shows is. If you happen to know, or how much you get paid, if that's not a rude question to ask.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Like I think the acts that have been there longer, they started with, for example, like when I started, it was like around $2,500 a week, and then if you do great work for a couple of years, then the agent can renegotiate a little bit more. But also right now, like it's cruise market is not like in a really good spot right now. So maybe they go, okay, we have like smaller capacity, and we still have a lot of performers that want to do it and are looking for work. So I don't know what our opening bid is going to be, but like somewhere between maybe $2,300 and $3,000. That is like the per week is like the bracket that they're comfortable with in their budget.
Cool, that is fantastic. Susan Zeller would like to know what type of workshops are they looking for?
Okay, let me go back on the fees real quick, because and then I will ask about the workshops, because that's too like it's a really good amount, and like if you do great, and if you're like more like a star performer, maybe you can push your agent can push it even a little bit more. But then also that's the amount so you go and you take your commission for the agent out of that one. Then you have some gratuities on board that get taken out of as well. They will pay for your flight, and they will reimburse you for transport from the ship to from the airport to the ship. But then maybe you live far away from an airport in your hometown, and it's like they book a 5 a.m. flight. Then you need to book a taxi. That goes out of your salary as well. So there's a couple of things that got taken out of it. And then also the show, it needs to be a great show. So maybe you need to get videos edited and for your show, and you have all those expenses that you need to take into account as well with the fee. So that's a side note. And then I had like the salary was paid in dollars, and I was living in Europe. So then you have the conversion of the weaker dollar compared to the euro. And at one point I go, okay, like then you really see like, okay, is this still a great salary for you if you're slaying it in the corporate market? Then maybe you wanna consider how good it is at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And now for the workshop. For the workshops, you don't get booked with just the workshop. You need to have a very solid stage show. That's the reason why they book you. And then the workshop is more a bonus. So it's an extra. But like I think they expect it more often. And so if you don't have it, it could be a deal breaker. But it's not like a thing that they just book you for. The same with close-up magic. Sometimes close-up magicians, they ask, I want to do close-up magic on the ship. Will I get booked for it? And you go, no, in some situations it could be a nice little bonus, but it won't be the thing that it will book you for.
Got it.
Okay.
Very cool.
Cool.
Just a couple more questions. Heather Johnson wants to know if there are LBGT specific cruises, and if they book specifically LGBT acts that are put together for that.
LGBTG act. What is an LGBTG act?
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans,
asexual.
Yeah.
So like for the majority, like all the Christians, they want shows that. So if you use the F word and stuff on stage, that's not appreciated, and you won't get asked back. So like it needs to be a show that basically that's not gonna offend anybody. So that's what they want for the bread and butter cruise ship gigs. But then you have the charters, and then there's sometimes there are gay charters and stuff. But then it's not the cruise line that will book that one. It's more the party that organizes and charters the ship. So if you are in with the organization that throws those kind of events, and if one of those events just happened to be that they charter a cruise ship for, and then you can get booked by the organizer of that event on the chartered ship. So then you're working on the ship that 1 week, we have a bread and butter cruise ship entertainer, and that's nature. Like it's just gonna be your selling point. Then I don't think you can make a career in the cruise ship market.
Right. Okay.
And just for FYI, we had Misty coming in with the knowledge here. Apparently, there's a popular gay charter called Atlantis Cruises, who would obviously be very friendly to LGBTQ specific shows, but they book the acts directly and are not connected with the cruise line that they work with. So that's like Niels was just saying, is that's a company that probably rents out the or charters the ship, and then they book the acts directly.
Yeah. So just reach out to that organization that charters the ship, charters the ship, and then see if they're interested in your act to bring it on.
Okay. Well, anything else from Facebook?
Yeah. Final one here. Eric Walton. Do you use Audio Ache or some other similar queuing system?
I do, but I didn't use it on the ship. And that's also because when I was doing the ships all the time, that was right before I went to the comedy barn. And then when I was at the comedy barn, I did them sometimes. But it's also like the sound and the light technician on the ship, that's their full-time job. They're really, really good. So with the cue sheet that I had, it was very clear. I always managed to do my show very well with the professionals that they had on board in the tech team. But I do have an audio media monkey, and I love it. And my show here in Ohio, I'm gonna run my show through Media Monkey, and also I know like a lot of people on the ship use them as well. Like I just didn't use it on the ship, but it's a great system, and I think it will be a great match to use it on the ship.
Great. Is that it from Facebook then for now?
Yeah, that looks like it is it for Facebook for now.
All right.
If I missed something somebody asked, my apologies, but I think that's everything.
Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been such a pleasure. Niels, thank you so much for coming on.
Cool, it was fun.
And also,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just also want to just give one more shout out to Misty Knight for answering questions on the booking agent side, and we put her information in the Facebook chat, so check that out if you're interested in having an agent talking about cruise ship work, because she's
100%.
very knowledgeable.
Thank you, Misty, for helping me with the questions and stuff. It's funny, we met on Royal Caribbean, we met on Disney Cruise Line, and then in Vegas a couple times as well, like with Wonder Ground. But like yeah, we did met on a couple different ships, and that's when we first met, and they're so good.
Yes, she says, thank you, Niels. Your insight was 100% accurate.
Okay, great. Like,
good.
That was the one thing, because now I'm like focusing like with the comedy barn, for the last 2 years, and some of the details for the most recent changes. But like I saw the changes, coming with the more time and all that stuff. But like, and also there's like all these changes between the different cruise lines. It could even be that I was, one summer like Royal Caribbean all the time, and then you come back on. Then I came back on Celebrity Cruises, and then they had changed the policy, just a little thing, how to get from the airport to the ship. And then, so it's like, it's a market that's constantly changing with like the groundwork. That's pretty consistent and stays the same.
Yeah, it's a shame you were so accurate and helpful, because I was going to have Misty on next week and correct.
Well, the good thing is she is an agent. I'm an act working, so it's very difficult to take the work from the agent. So the agent always wins.
That's right. The agent always wins. So Niels, I think that's it. Do you have any closing words? Let us know, first of all, where we can support you, and where we can follow you on social media and where we can throw you some love and all that kind of stuff. You know, what can we do to help you out?
Okay, well, first of all, you helped me out by chiming in into this webinar, and I really appreciate it, and it was fun spending some time here. Then the other thing is I have videos on MagicFlix. So if you're interested in seeing more of me juggling, then check out my videos on this platform, MagicFlix. If you're in the area and you just want to see the show that I was talking about, I'm doing it on land all summer in a theater in Ohio. So if you go to my website, comedyjuggler.com, you can find my contact information, social media. If you have a couple more questions about this cruise ship thing, you can reach out to me, and show information and stuff is on that as well. So that's how you can stay in touch with me. But like most of the time, check out my stuff here on MagicFlix.
Great. And Niels is going to be producing a series of videos too for us that are going to be a little more in-depth than the material we went over today. So if you have a question or a more specific question, please just leave it in the, rather than flooding your inbox, let's just put them in this comment thread down here.
Okay, great.
Niels can come back and check on these, maybe type you an answer or something, but then he can include the full-fledged information inside.
I will, and then I will answer, and then Misty will proofread it.
Yes, we'll give Misty admin admin rights, and she can delete all of Niels's answers and give the correct ones.
Yeah, she can write it in English. I will write it in Dutch, and then she cannot figure it out.
All right, so once again, Niels, thank you so much. If anyone wants to experience a 30-day free trial of MagicFlix, you can go over there right now, click up on the top right corner, hit subscribe, and type in the word magic, and you get your 30 days for free. With Niels, he'll be back again, I'm sure, to talk to us more about this. I know that people, first of all, we got, you know, maybe 20 to 30 people just watching with us live, or actually more than 30 with the attendees, which is great. But I know that probably 200 or 300 more people are going to watch this afterwards. And so there are going to be a ton of questions that they have that weren't answered. So let's have people just post those questions down here in the comments, and we'll address them. We'll forward them to Niels if he doesn't get to them himself, and he'll be able to put those all in his video series upcoming. So thanks again, everybody. Let's see love in the comment thread for Niels, please. We can't be here clapping live, so let's just see a bunch of love and give him some good analytics on his website and on his social media. Niels, any parting words?
No, it was a pleasure doing this, and I'm excited. Yeah, reading everybody's feedback and then creating a little course on that one. And I'm going to work on this course for cruise ship entertainment, and I'm also going to work on a course for comedy writing that we spoke about.
Nice.
So, that's something else.
Yes, and that's going to be a whole different episode.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right, well, thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Will, for taking questions. And again, just fill in those comment threads and show some love to Niels. Niels, thank you so much for coming.
See you later. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye now.